Pranams to everyone at the temple, and a special pranams to our Swamiji, Swami Parameshananda. It's such an honor to be here, and can't believe Swamiji is here also. We wish Swami Prakashananda could have also been here to grace this event, but so I'm here today though. On behalf of all of the members of Chinmay Mission, we're very grateful. So every night, we are seeing different names of Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda. And as we would have been seeing, these names are not specific to only one Mahatma. All Mahatmas carry that same light of knowledge, that same light of peace, no matter what sampradaya they belong to, no matter what different group. In fact, they don't even have to be from India, they don't have to be Hindus. So many great masters have walked this earth. And some of their characteristics we try to imbibe in our life. And one way to do that is by celebrating their qualities. So we'll just chant a few names of Gurudev and then we'll see their one significance, okay? Om Shastrodharakaya Namaha.
Om Shastrodharakaya Namaha.
Om Shuddha Sattvaya Namaha.
Om Shuddha Sattvaya Namaha.
Om Shruti Paragaya Namaha.
Om Shruti Paragaya Namaha.
Om Shrotriyaya Namaha.
Om Shrotriyaya Namaha.
Om Sannyasine Namaha.
Om Sannyasine Namaha.
Om Samabuddhaye Namaha.
Om Samabuddhaye Namaha.
Om Satchidanandaya Namaha.
Om Satchidanandaya Namaha.
Om Sarvahita Chintakaya Namaha.
Om Sarvahita Chintakaya Namaha.
Om Satya Sankalpaya Namaha.
Om Satya Sankalpaya Namaha.
Om Satya Sankalpaya Namaha.
Om Satya Sankalpaya Namaha.
So, these names again illustrate the various qualities of Mahatmas, in particular Swami Chinmayananda. But why even look at these names? You see, anytime we see something that's truly great, don't we want to go and see it or experience it for ourselves? See, great things, we go to experience them for three reasons. One is because we love that thing. So, if you are an art lover, you might save up all your money so that one day you can go to Italy and you can see Van Gogh's paintings, you can see his Starry Night, you can see other paintings that he would have done because you love that. Or if you're one of our small kids like who we saw chanting today, the thing you love might be Chuck E. Cheese. So you beg your parents, please, 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 take me to Chuck E. Cheese. Or if you're in Trinidad, to Harry's Water Park. I have not yet been there, someone has not carried me, I'm looking at the chicks. But if you're small, maybe you want to see Harry's Water Park. Because you love it. Next is because you're in awe of something. When you hear about that, you feel, I must see it. So I looked up for everyone. One thing is the Great Wall of China. People go to see that Great Wall. Do you know it is 5,500.3 miles? And in kilometers, it's 8,851 kilometers. Recently, we went on yatra for 3 days, and we felt it was a big deal to walk for some 70 miles, right? Imagine 5,000 miles. There are people that have walked that Great Wall. They want to see it because it's awesome. Okay? Or you want to see Taj Mahal, so many of these things, because you've heard about them and their majesty somehow draws you closer to them. The last is, you might want to see something because you're curious. So you heard some rumors that at the Diwali Nagar, there's all different kinds of foods you don't see normally. So you're curious. You might have heard that we've been making dosa. We made dosa this year for Diwali Nagar. So maybe you want to go and try that because you've never tried it before. Curious. Or you want to go to the Chai Sanmelan coming up at the ashram because you've never had chai, hot masala chai. People always ask, what is that? And we tell them, it's tea with spices. And they say, that sounds incredible. I've never heard of putting spices in tea. So I have to come because I'm curious to try that. So whether you've come to Gurudev's names out of love for Gurudev, whether you come to them out of having some sense of awe for who he was, or perhaps you're just curious, any one of those reasons is okay. But hopefully, through the practice or through the study of these names, we develop some love. So Gurudev's name here is what we call his legacy. They illustrate Gurudev's legacy. If you're a painter, your legacy is left behind in a painting. So if you're Van Gogh, your legacy is in your paintings. If you're an architect, your legacy is left as a building, as a construction. So you'll see that Taj Mahal must have had some architect. But for a great soul, for a great Mahatma, their legacy is their character. How they would have lived their life. So you see, even this beautiful ashram is in the legacy of a great Mahatma. And his life would have inspired so many people to follow that. So in the same way, this name of Gurudev is illustrating Gurudev's legacy. It is Satya Sankalpaya. Satya Sankalpa. Satya Sankalpa means one whose resolutions are very firm. The resolutions themselves are like truth. See, we make a lot of resolutions, okay? But they're not very easy to keep. So we make New Year's resolutions, but we really should call them New Week resolutions, okay? Because you can maybe keep them for 1 week. Longer than 1 week is a problem. You can also call them New Week resolution because they are W-E-A-K, weak. They're very weak. So I'm going to go every day, exercise, I'm going to eat healthier, I'm going to give up coffee in the morning. Within 2 days, actually 1 week is very optimistic. I think most of us, within 2 days, we think, you know, that's okay, next year is coming around. So I'll wait. Mark Twain has a very funny quote. He said, "Giving up smoking is very easy. I've done it hundreds of times." Right? It was easy to take a resolution. But to follow through on that resolution is actually very difficult. And in fact, we take what is called not Satya Sankalpa, but vague Sankalpas. Vague. So we say, if X is there, if X, Y, and Z are there, then I'll do something. So if I have no obligations at work, if my kids don't have any homework, if everything is okay, if I am not disturbed, if I am not busy, then maybe I'll come to satsang in the evening, right? So if you invite someone for satsang, they'll tell you so many reasons why they can make it, why they maybe cannot make it, right? Gurudev used to say, if you wait till everything in your life is perfect before studying spirituality, that's like waiting for there to be no waves in the ocean so that you can learn how to swim. There's never a time when something is not bothering us, something is not on our agenda, we have to make time for this. So you see, Gurudev, he made a decision that he was going to teach this knowledge. And nothing that came in his way ever stopped Gurudev from fulfilling that promise that he had made. Whether the weather was not good, whether the people were not kind. So a lot of people said, you cannot teach this in English. You have to only teach it in Sanskrit or a local language. This English is not our language. But Gurudev didn't let that stop him. Once, they wouldn't let him speak in public in the venue that they had promised. So he had to go and speak in some house that had a rumor of being haunted. So he was in a haunted house. To advertise for his own lectures, because other people weren't there, he used to ride a bike and used to tell everyone, come see the Swami talk. Then when the people came there now, they see the same person on the bike is sitting at the stand. So he never let anybody's bad feeling stop him from doing what he set out to do. That is what's known as Satya Sankalpa. We decide to go jogging one day and one person looks at us and we think, I'm never going back here, I'm never going to go jogging again, right? We're looking for an excuse to give up our Sankalpa. But Gurudev, he in his 40 years, over 40 years of doing this work, never once did he let anything stop him. For a simple reason. He had made a promise to himself and to his guru to spread this knowledge. And once he made that promise, he was going to carry it out. Even one time I remember as students, at the end of our satsang, Swamiji had made some announcement, I don't have a family, I don't have kids. The reason why I do this work is because of one reason. I made a promise to my guru. So this kind of sankalpa is Satya Sankalpa. It's strong as a rock. Nothing can shake it. No words, no circumstances, illness, tiredness, despair, none of these things can touch a person who has truly made a strong resolve. If we make a promise and we can't keep it up, it's because we are somehow afraid, or somehow these things mean more to us than what our promise was. We feel that the opinions of other people, fear, embarrassment, these things can shake us so easily. And sometimes we refuse to even have pride in our own heritage. Sometimes we don't want people to think that we are Hindus. We just want to blend into the crowd. We're afraid. Why is that? Because we don't have that pride in being Hindus. To awaken that was Gurudev's life's work. And we see this in everything that he would have done. There's one very lovely saying, when you walk with God, you should fear no man, because God is beside you. We feel fear or embarrassment because we don't believe God is next to us. We feel we're there by ourselves. But Gurudev was never alone. So, in his honor, we'll just sing a small kirtan. Jai Guru Omkara, Jai Jai Sadguru Omkara.
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 Brahma Vishnu Sada Shivaya.
Brahma Vishnu Sada Shivaya.
Brahma Vishnu Sada Shivaya.
Brahma Vishnu Sada Shivaya.
Okay, so now we're seeing Gita. And we've come all over these almost 100 days now, we've come through 17 chapters of Gita. So many hundreds of verses we would have accomplished. Over 700. And no, not over 700, over 600. There's only 700 verses. Don't worry. So, in chapter 16 is given all of these Daivik and Asuric tendencies. So those tendencies, those Daivik tendencies, which are divine tendencies, which are basically good habits, good traits, which move us further and further along the path of spirituality. So traits like akrodaha, not getting angry, having daya, compassion for others, being happy, being content, all of these things are things that will propel us spiritually. And those asuric qualities are all of those bad habits, negative habits that we have that hold us back. And these habits are not, see, usually when we read these stories, Puranic stories of all of Lord Krishna's exploits, Rama's exploits, Sri Ram's exploits, we see that they're always fighting some demon. They have some sword or bow and arrow, they're always fighting someone. But our good and bad qualities, we're having that fight within us all the time. So in the morning, when you are supposed to get up early and do puja and do your little japa in the morning, that's when I want to stay in bed, take an extra 10 minutes, wait until my third or fourth alarm goes off and I have to get out of bed, I will wait. Why? That's not some asura there holding, a mugdar over your head saying you have to stay in bed. That's you. Our own mind tells us, 5 more minutes, please. I was up late last night, I'm feeling a little ache, pain, just sleep a little longer. That's our own mind. So these Daivik and Asuric tendencies are spoken of. You see, everybody has those qualities. Some people will have more than one or less than another. So if you want to be very spiritual, be in satsang, be with people who will bring more and more Daivik qualities into your life. And then in chapter 17, we saw ways in which to take different acts, yajna, dana, tapas, and looked at them from different angles. Someone who's very sattvic, how they do these, rajasic, tamasic. Okay, even the food that we eat, what food makes us very rajasic, what food makes us very tamasic. One good rule of thumb is, if it makes you sleepier and it makes your belly too full, that means it's tamasic. And that's unfortunate because that's most of the foods we like, right? You want to have some doubles, aloo pie, nice chana and aloo. Those things always make us feel very heavy, sleepy. Foods that are very fresh, that bring us a lot of energy, healthy, these are sattvic foods. Rajasic foods make us very active, so a lot of coffee, spicy foods. So these were all seen in 17 and 16. As we come to chapter 18 now, we are seeing one very complex question, which is, what is the nature of renunciation? We'll see now, Arjuna is going to ask. And the other thing that we're going to see is a summary of all of the ideas that have been presented so far in Gita. So this is chapter 18. It's a very beautiful chapter. But first what we'll do is chant the first verse in 18. Ata ashtadashodhyayah.
Ata ashtadashodhyayah.
Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna uvacha.
Sannyasya mahabaho.
Sannyasya mahabaho.
Tattvamiccami veditum.
Tattvamiccami veditum.
त्यागस्य च हृषीकेशः
त्यागस्य च ऋषिकेशः
पृथक्केशिनिषूदन
पृथक्केशिनिषूदन
पृथक्केशिनिषूदन.
पृथक्केशिनिषूदन.
So, even before this is introduced, we have a very sacred tradition that we see not just in Hinduism, but in any spiritual tradition of renunciation. So in Catholicism, you'll see there are nuns, or they'll have also priests. They won't get married. They'll just be doing that all the time, service. You see in Buddhism, they have their monk tradition. In Islam, you have your mystics, the Sufis. They were wandering mystics. In Hinduism, we call them sannyasis, as our esteemed Swamiji here also. Sannyasis live a life of renunciation. They give up certain things, worldly life, in order to pursue some higher spiritual life. And we see that this is something, so we can ask, right, what is the common factor in all of these different traditions? Is it just what someone wears? Is it just that, maybe that they don't have responsibilities, they don't have any householder duties, and we think, maybe that looks pretty good, maybe I should look into it. But no, it's something different. That spirit of renunciation is some vision that they have that they then look out into the world with. It's not just something that you wear. That's why we'll see that there are so many different fields in which when we want something greater in life, we have to be willing to sacrifice something in order to get it. So even if you see, they have all of the Olympic athletes. I saw some on the highway, there was a big billboard that had Usain Bolt. He won the running competition, right? Now, if you're Usain Bolt, I guarantee you, you're not stopping after work to eat doubles. I guarantee you that you don't get to sleep in the mornings. You wake up and you live a life of discipline. Why? Because you want to be in the Olympics, right? So you have this higher goal and you give up certain things in order to achieve that goal. So for these great people, they would have renounced certain aspects of worldly life in order to be with Bhagwan all the time, God all the time. They'd made that sacrifice, renounced certain things. Everything else, such as getting a fixed income, being able to make retirement savings, buy a big house, all of these things they renounce to live a spiritual life. Now, this helps us become what is called as chitta ekagrita. You become single-pointed. In Gita it said that someone that has a lot of different desires, their mind becomes bahu shakha. It has many, many different branches. So even while you're sitting in satsang, you're thinking, when I finish, I might have to stop by at the grocery store to pick up some things for home. I don't know if I turned off all the lights at the house. I hope that my gate is locked. All of these different thoughts come to us in satsang also. Why is that? Because we have so many different balls that we're juggling in the air at the same time. But when we renounce certain things, we can become very single-pointed. We can become very focused in our goals. And this is what is represented. But as implied, renunciation has to be something deeper than something external that you might see. That's why you see some people who will wear a uniform, but they will have the exact opposite qualities. So some people are wearing the manager's uniform in a business or at work, and they're the most unmanageable people. They're very stubborn, or they're completely, very unmanageable, very hard to work with, even though they're a manager. Or even if you look at politicians, their job description is called public servant. What does that mean? That I put service above profit. But I don't have to tell anyone. All you have to do is open your newspaper or turn on the television, and all you see are politicians who have this ulta. They put profits before service. So they're wearing a uniform and they're doing something else. In fact, that's a big thing right now in even American politics you're seeing now. Or they have all of these health pills now. They'll put them in a bottle, and on the bottle it says healthy, healthy, healthy. Then you take the pills and you become more sick than you were before you took them. But vegetables, okay, fruits, all the things that are really healthy for us, no one even has to tell us that they're healthy, that we don't eat. But we want to have a pill in a bottle. A lot of those sugar substitutes, now they have Splenda and this and that. They've been shown to cause a lot of cancer and different health defects also, birth defects. But what do they put? Healthy, healthy, healthy. So the outer form is one thing, but what's inside is something else. So this can't be just about what we wear. It has to be a spirit of renunciation. It has to be a principle of renunciation. And when we give up certain selfish pursuits, then we are able to lift our eyes to some higher pursuit. And in our Shastras, there are two words that are specifically given to describe this renunciation. One is called tyaga. It comes from the Sanskrit root tyaj. Tyaj means to drop. The other word is sannyasa. Sannyasa means samyak purva nyasa. Nyasa means to renounce, give up. Purva means everything, totally. Samyak means very well. So you very well renounced everything outside. So Arjuna has a very good question. He says, O Hrishikeshaha, O Mahabaho, O Keshinishudana, Sanyasasya Tyagasya Cha Pritak Tattvam Veditum Ichchami. Of this Tyaga and Sannyas, you please Pritak. Pritak means exactly tell me what is their Tattvam, their essence. Veditum means I'd like to know it. Ichchami. Veditum Ichchami. Ichchami means I would like to know. Veditum. No. What is this difference? You see, two words can be very similar but mean something different. So if someone said, you know that guy, he renounced the raise that his job was offering him in order to spend more time with his family. That's one thing you can say. Then someone else says he gave up finishing his homework on time because he had been watching TV all day. In both phrases, one you're saying he renounced the job offer to spend time with his family. He gave up finishing his homework because he was watching TV all day. You're using two words that are similar, renounce and give up. But in one, it's very noble, and the other one, it's not so noble. So Arjuna has the same question. Are tyaga and sannyas like this? What makes these two words, what is the relationship of these two words? Then he also calls Bhagavan Hrishikeshaha, Mahabaho, Keshinishudana. These words represent different aspects of Bhagavan's personality. One is Mahabaho, 1,000-armed. So Lord Bhagavan Shri Krishna was so strong enough to defeat the demon Keshi. Keshi Nishudana means one who killed that demon Keshi. How did he become so strong? Because he was Hrishikanam Indriyaha Ishaha. Well, Hrishikanam Ishaha iti Hrishikeshaha. One who has conquered their sense organs is Hrishikesha. That means that when we conquer our laziness, when we conquer our desire to always watch TV, taste something good, eat something good, and instead we decide to give that up to control ourselves, to concentrate on God, then we become very strong. So Bhagavan is strong because he's one who, his senses don't control him. He controls his senses. So all of these aspects of Bhagavan, Arjuna is highlighting using those names. And because he also is flattering Bhagavan, right? You say, oh, so many nice names. So Bhagavan answers him, right? So that's the next two verses. Shri Bhagavan
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Kamyanam karmanam nyasam
Kamyanam karmanam nyasam
Sanyasam kavayo viduhu
Sannyasam kavayo viduhu
Sarva karma phalatyagam
Sarva karma phalatyagam
Prahustyagam vichakshanaha
Prahustyagam vichakshanaha
Prahustyagam vichakshanaha
Prahustyagam vichakshanaha.
Now, to describe these two words, first Bhagavan gives some examples of different thinkers and what they would have said about this issue, right? In the very first one he says, Kavayahas, who are great poets, great seers, they say that this sannyas is kamya karma nyasam. So what does that mean? He's saying sannyas is when you give up any selfish activities. So anything that I do just for myself, just because I want to become more famous, more rich, more happy, more whatever it might be for myself, I give up those activities. And I call that sannyas. And vichakshanahas, these wise people, they say that tyaga is sarva karma phalatyagam. Meaning, whatever I do in life, I do it, and whatever comes to me as karma phala, meaning I get some results. So if I do well at my job, I get a raise. If I do bad at my job, I get fired. But whatever results come, I sarva phala tyagam. I give up any attachment to those results. So someone says something nice to me, okay. Someone doesn't say something nice to me, whatever comes to me, I am what is known cool. I am cool because I am not attached to what I think should come to me. So these are two perspectives. One is that this sannyas is giving up selfish actions, and the definition of tyaga is giving up the fruit of actions. But that's not all. Then in the next verse he gives two more examples of what other seekers have said, right? So verse 3. Tyajam doshavadityeke
Tyajam doshavadityeke
Karma prahurmanishinaha
Karma prahurmanishinaha
Yajna dana tapak karma
Yajna dana tapah karma
Natyajamiti chapare
Natyajamiti chapare
Natyajamiti chapare.
Natyajamiti chapare.
They make a very interesting argument here. They say, karma doshavat tyajyam. We should give up all karmas. Renunciation means giving up of all karmas. Why? Because any karma we do always has some good and bad mixed in it. No karma is all good or all bad. No action is all good or all bad. What does that mean? Look, we came here today for satsang. That is very good thing, right? But to get here, we had to drive in a car. If you drove in the car, it's giving out so many pollutants. It's giving out so much gas. It's using up so many materials. How they produce that car also, you don't know what harm they did just to mine all of the metal and iron and everything used. so much damage they've done to the environment to make that car. But you drove it to do a good thing. So is your action good or bad? They say even the agarbatti that we use in puja, they come from India. So many children are employed as slave labor to make all of these things, even though we use them for puja. So even when we do a good action, we don't know how many things are mixed up in that action that can make it good or bad also. So these seers have also said all action should be renounced. So some people feel this is great news. There's quite a few things I would like to drop. One is my job. I have to drive all the way to Port of Spain, and the traffic in the morning is horrible. So maybe I should, just judge that, right? I'll drop it. It says to drop all actions. I will drop that job. Or some people say, I would really like to drop my wife's cooking. I like my own cooking better than her cooking. So let me just drop that. But that's not what it means. In fact, Gita tells us, nahi, as far as karma is concerned, nahi kashchit shanamapi. Not for even 1 second can we sit and not do some action. Watch. If you're sitting, you say, okay, I'm going to give up this job. I'm going to give up this cooking that I don't like at home. Maybe I'll also give up my in-laws. That would also be nice. And I'm just going to go to the mountains, and I'm not going to do anything. So you go and sit there in the mountains, okay? But guess what? If you breathe, aren't you doing something? If your leg goes a little numb because you're sitting there, okay, and you have to move a little just to sit, that's also moving. You're moving, you're breathing, you're thinking. All of these things are actions. Watch. Even if, maybe you're sitting in satsang and the person next to you has gone to sleep and you have to poke them a little, right? Before you poke them, you first have to have the thought, I should poke this person. I should wake them up. You have to have the thought first, and then you do the action. So we say even thoughts are actions. They're just a different form of actions. So, how can you give up all actions? Is it even possible? That's given in this next phrase. They say, other seers say that certain actions should not be given up. Yajna, dana, tapa, karma, na tyajyam. These three, yajna, dana, and tapas, should not be given up. So then, okay, I've heard a lot of different versions now, Bhagwan. Okay, you've given me 4 versions of what these words mean. I'm more confused than before I asked you the question. So I'm in a little trouble, right? This is Arjuna's perspective. And we shouldn't feel bad. All of us are feeling this way. What does it mean? Is it, sarva karma phalatyagam? Is it this giving up all actions? Is it just yajna, dana, and tapa I'm supposed to do? What does it mean? Bhagavan is very compassionate. He explains exactly in the next 2 verses. He says, Nishchayam shinu me tatra
Nishchayam shrinu me tatra
Tyage bharata sattama
Tyage bharata sattama
Tyago hi purusha vyagra
Tyago hi purusha vyagra
Trividha samprakirtitaha
Trividha samprakirtitaha
Trividha samprakirtitaha
Trividha samprakirtitaha. Okay.
So first he says that Tatra tyage me nishchayam shrinu. Shrinu means you listen. To what? To me telling you nishchayam firmly about this tyaga. This tyaga is of trividaha, 3 types, right? Samprakirtitaha. It's well known that it's of these 3 types. This he'll describe in the coming verses. But first he's telling Arjuna, look, I'm going to answer your question. And he also uses 2 very nice names for Arjuna, Bharata Sattama, and he also uses Purusha Vyagraha. Vyagraha means tiger of men, Purushaha. Among all men, you are so brave. And you're also Sattama, you are best, O Bharata. And I will explain these three to you. And then Bhagavan comes on the side of this Yajna, Dana and Tapas. Yajna, Dana, Tapa, Karma.
Karma
Natyajyam karyameva tat.
Natyajyam karyameva tat.
Yajno danam tapaschaiva.
Yajno danam tapaschaiva.
Pavanani manishina.
Pavanani manishina.
Pavanani manishina.
Pavanani manishina.
These Manishis, these great seers, they say that this Yajna, Dana and Tapas should not be given up. And I also agree with that. This is what Bhagavan is saying. Karyam eva, they are things that have to be done. Natyajam, they should not be dropped. Why? Because they are pavanani. When we do Yajna, Dana and Tapas, I'll explain that, we become purified. We become purified of sorrow, despair, any grief. These things get washed out when we have this Yajna, Dana and Tapas in our life. And so it's interesting. First let's see what they are and then I'll explain why. Tapas is a word that means austerity. Austerity means anything that means that we aren't indulging, but we are pushing for something that's a little difficult. Tap means to burn. So if you see waking up early, going for exercise, especially like these athletes, that involves a lot of burning. Your muscles burn, everything burns. You have to do that, tapas, in order to hone any type of skill. So if you see musicians, from the time they're small children, they'll be sitting there with their violin, their piano, whatever it might be, and they're playing it. If you see, we have one young man in our ashram, little boy Shiv. He plays his tabla, and he's such a good tabla player. But anytime you can see him playing, practicing all the time. That's tapas. But why are tapas and yajna given and danam? Because people can do a lot of tapas for bad things also. So if you see someone who's a really good thief, they also had to practice that thing. It's not easy to pick someone's pocket. I don't know if any of you have ever tried it. Maybe when you're trying, maybe when you know your spouse has gotten a raise and the money is there in the pocket, in the wallet, maybe you try to pick it. But I don't know. I'm just saying it's not easy to pick pockets, right? You have to become skilled at it. You have to practice. So that's why this yajna word is given. Tapas means honing that skill through sacrifice, labor, through effort. Then yajna means do it as a sacrifice to Bhagavan. Don't do it for yourself. So if you love to be a musician, if you love playing music, play it, but play it as service to Bhagavan. Service to humanity in some way. Service to the world. Don't do it for yourself. So yajna says, tapas says, hone your skill, your power. Then yajna says, point that power in the right direction. Something that will benefit others also. And then, when you gain a lot from your sacrifice, then you have to do some dhanam. Once you get something, give it as charity also. To those who have a lot, you also have to give a lot. That's the rule. People these days, they have a lot and they like to give a lot less. Somewhere I saw a joke that people come to the temple and the people will be wearing the nicest outfits, but they'll only put $1 in the aarti plate. Why is that? Because we feel that these days, if I make money, I want to keep it for myself. But interestingly, Bhagavan himself is saying that this yajna, dana and tapas, they are not what is it called? They are not something elective. They are something that you have to do. It's mandatory that we do it. Our tradition puts this burden on us. Not burden, but it puts this injunction on us. That our life has to have this yajna, dana and tapas. Only then are we living a really spiritual life, good life. As we see these, we take our gifts, we put them to some good service, we offer things as gratitude to Bhagavan in dhanam, and we say that these things are essential. Why? Because even if you don't do anything, just by living, you're taking so much from this world. Right? If we eat bodhi, if we eat pumpkin, if we eat chana, aloo, whatever you like, those all came from where? Someone once went to Gurudev, right? This one auntie, and she said she had put this very nice feast in front of him, and she said, "Oh Swamiji, look, I made everything for you. I made all of this for you." So he knew this lady, so he looked at her, and he said, "Really? You made everything? Who cooked it?" She said, "Oh, my cook cooked it. I paid my cook, he cooked it." And then he said, "Who got all the vegetables? Who got all the things for the meal?" She said, "Well, I sent my servant out to the market to buy it." And then he said, "Where did the vegetables come from in the market?" She said, "Well, I guess the farmer grew it." And then he said, "Okay, well, the farmer grew it, but where did those plants come from?" From Bhagavan only. So you see, we feel, I'm so great, I did all of this. But even by living, eating, breathing, standing here, sitting, we have taken so much from this world. So we're already in debt and we have to pay it back throughout our life. So that's why this yajna, dana and tapas is not optional. It's mandatory. And then Bhagavan will go on further to elaborate on these aspects of exactly what is the distinction between this sannyasa and tyaga. But that we will see tomorrow.